Welcome to the Watchman Newscast live stream, folks. And let's start with this proposition. They say that the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. That pretty much crystallizes the last, 80 years or so of Middle East policy, in particular regarding Gaza. Now, President Trump put forth a pretty bold proposal yesterday. If you missed it, I had an instant reaction to it on yesterday's live stream. You can find it here on the channel under videos or under Watchman Newscast. It's all right there. But an outside the box, imagine that, an outside the box proposal when it comes to solving the Gaza problem. And folks, talk about a problem. It's been a thorn in the side, not only for Israel, but by extension, the world for decades now. And you might say the world, what do you mean? Well, the world, including the United States, Europe, et cetera, has poured in billions upon billions of dollars into this tiny coastal strip on the Mediterranean Sea. I mean, untold billions. And what have they been, quote, rewarded with? More terror, more extremism, more jihad, more rockets, more terror tunnels. An invasion of Israel on October 7th, 1,200 Israelis slaughtered, a hostage crisis which is still unfolding. Hamas takes the aid, pockets it. The people don't see it, the people of Gaza, who, by the way, voted for Hamas in 2006 and who polls show still support Hamas and what happened on October 7th in large numbers, but I digress. What I'm saying to you is this: the paradigm, it must be broken. Really, October 7th broke it. Things can't go back to the way they were. Bottom line here, folks, in Gaza. No longer. And it's a time for bold, original, outside-the-box thinking. And yet, what do we have? Outside of Trump, which we'll break down in a minute, and the larger prophetic implications. I believe we're in a prophetic moment right now. I'm not just talking about Gaza. I'm talking in America, Israel, around the world, Middle East. Exciting time. God is moving. We're going to break that down, the prophetic implications. But what have we heard since October 7th? A doubling down of the same failed, ridiculous, unoriginal, unimaginative policies and suggestions that we've heard for 80 years. So the Palestinians launch a brutal jihad against Israel on October 7th, and the solution of Europe, the UN, et cetera, the Democrat Party here in the United States is reward them with a state, give them their own state. You can't make this stuff up. It's like a bunch of zombies when it comes to Gaza. Must have Palestinian state, brains, must have, I mean, seriously. They can't get beyond that two-state solution paradigm. They're incapable of doing it. Then when Donald Trump comes along like a wrecking ball and says, no, you know what? Why don't we try this? Because everything you've done is not working. It lacks any sort of common sense. Let's try this. And of course, when he does that, they say, oh, they howl and wail and gnash their teeth. God forbid someone steps out of their paradigm. And by the way, what they're telling you right now, European Union, United Nations, Democrat Party here in the United States, the main voices of the Arab nations, what they're saying right now, and folks, get this, Trump rightly said yesterday that Gaza is a pile of rubble right now, thanks to Hamas, which initiated, key point there, initiated a war against Israel on October 7th, 2023. And in doing so, they brought judgment down upon the heads of all Gazans. That's what Hamas did and continues to do. And again, many of those so-called innocent civilians in Gaza were anything but. 5,000 at least joined Hamas in swarming over the border on October 7th. And again, as I mentioned a minute ago, polls show that, yeah, a large number still support Hamas. So what they want, the global elites and the Western diplomats, the chattering class, you could call them, get this, prepare yourself. Because no matter where you live in the world, and we've got viewers from around the world, you will be affected. Your pocketbook, your wallet will be affected because taxpayer dollars from your nation will go to this doomed cause. Here it is. Let's give billions upon billions. Would it cost $1 trillion at this point, since Gaza is, as Trump called it, a demolition site? Untold billions, perhaps $1 trillion. Let's pour all of that into Gaza, rebuild it, and then watch as Hamas or perhaps some other jihadi group takes all the money, imposes itself upon Gaza, and launches attacks against Israel once again. That's what you're looking at 5 years from now, if not more. Look, it might take 10 years, 15 years, but okay. Rebuild, pour all the money in. Gaza is rebuilt, but Hamas is still there. Other terror groups, jihadis, still there. And how do you de-radicalize the population, by the way, if Hamas is still there, Islamic Jihad is still there, and other jihadis? It makes no sense. It's a plan that's doomed to failure. It's the same cycle. Again, I started with this proposition. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. Do these people have an original thought in their heads? Well, Donald Trump's got a lot, and you may not like him. I happen to like him a lot, and I love what he's doing, and he's a visionary leader. He's bold, and he thinks outside the box. That's what a good leader does. He thought outside the box during his first term, and we had the Abraham Accords, those historic peace treaties between Israel and its Arab neighbors. He thought outside the box and moved the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem. Now, in that case, much like now with this Gaza proposal, the world wailed and gnashed its teeth and warned of Armageddon if Trump were to move the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem. Guess what? I was there at the grand opening at the embassy. That didn't happen. I was also there on the White House lawn for the signing ceremony of the Abraham Accords in September 2020. None of the chaos that was promised happened. So bravo to Trump for being undeterred about these talking heads wailing in the mainstream media, the diplomats, and the global elites. What I'm saying is this: he's got all the right enemies, and all the right people are protesting what he said yesterday. That's a good sign to me. But Trump comes yesterday, and look, we can boil it down very simply. Again, I talked about this yesterday, but in case you're still trying to work this all out, because it was last night when he came out with this in his joint press conference with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, Trump, in essence, said this. He's been hinting at it for the past week or two, and then he really fleshed it out last night during that press conference at the White House with Bibi. He's saying, look, Gaza is hell on earth. And he made the point correctly that it was hell on earth before October 7th, before Hamas initiated a war with Israel, and Israel responded, as it should have, with overwhelming force in an effort to crush Hamas and to get back hostages. But Trump said, look, the place is hell on earth. There are still unexploded munitions there. It's basically the Gaza Strip. It's about 25 miles long. It's basically one big booby trap. That's how you can describe it. It's one giant booby trap. Above ground, in all the houses, below ground in that terror tunnel network. What Hamas did, I think, was unprecedented in world history. They turned an entire region into one big terror base and literally a giant booby trap, essentially. So the Trump administration is saying, look, he's saying it, other Trump administration officials are saying, how are you going to live there? It's rubble, number one. Number two, the whole place a giant booby trap. There's explosives everywhere, unexploded ordinances everywhere. Hamas is still lurking. Look, we've been saying here in the live stream correctly that Hamas is in its death throes, and it is. Compared to what Hamas was, the rocket arsenal smashed, the leadership wiped out, the terror tunnels exposed. We could go on. Weapons caches, we could go on. But Hamas still is a bit of a ragtag, I guess you would say, guerrilla group that's capable of intimidating the people of Gaza. and Hamas has the weapons. Numbers reduced, 20,000 Hamas jihadis killed reportedly, 20,000 since October 7th. Yes, new recruits joining, but these are inexperienced 15, 16-year-olds who are trying to replace the hardened, battle-tested Hamas jihadis that Israel took out. So that's a consideration as well. But look, Hamas still, as dwindling as they are and as weakened as they are, they're still the most formidable force in Gaza. And they've got the guns. So they've got the bully pulpit still. Now, they are no longer an existential threat to the state of Israel. No longer can Hamas launch 1,000 rockets in a day, invade southern Israel like we saw on October 7th. Those days are gone. But Hamas has not been decisively, once and for all, crushed and wiped out, which is the ultimate end game. And Bibi reiterated that yesterday in his meeting with Trump. So that's the state of play right now. It's a huge pile of rubble. It's a walking booby trap. Not walking, but it's one big booby trap. Danger lurks around every corner is what we're saying. And you still got rows of Hamas gunmen walking around threatening people. Trump rightly said, who would want to return to that? Who would want to live in that? And one Trump administration official said yesterday, look, it's uninhabitable. It's going to take 10, 15 years to rebuild this place. So along comes Trump. And he says, I'm hearing all the ideas to rebuild Gaza. And it sounds like the same old, tired, failed plans. Pump in billions and billions of dollars, rebuild it. Hamas takes the money and Hamas rules and launches more attacks against Israel. No thanks. So Trump says, what about this? The place is uninhabitable. What about we relocate the Palestinians who are living in Gaza, who've been living in hell for years? And let's be honest, he didn't say this, but I'll say it. A big reason for that is a hell of their own making. They voted Hamas in and have continued to support Hamas. It's a thoroughly brainwashed, radicalized population, some 1.7, 1.8 million Palestinians who live there in Gaza. Trump said, look, showing a lot of empathy, maybe more than was deserved for the Gazans, considering a lot of the havoc they've caused. But Trump said, look, we can relocate them to places like Egypt and Jordan. Other Arab nations, Muslim nations, they're Muslim brothers. Relocate them, put them in nice houses and nice neighborhoods and give them a nice life. In the meantime, Trump said, we essentially level what's left of Gaza and start anew. Build it up. He said it could be the Riviera of the Middle East. Look, the guy's a real estate magnate, right? A real estate developer by trade and a businessman. And his eyes light up. He says, look, beautiful waterfront property, coastal property, beautiful beaches there in Gaza, right on the Mediterranean Sea, incredible climate, sunshine. It could be a tourist hotspot, an economic development zone. Trump's talking about creating thousands of jobs there. To me, this all sounds pretty good and pretty outside of the box. And the people who are balking about it and wailing about it have no alternative plan other than two-state solution. The same zombified ideas that have failed time and time again for 80 years. So Trump comes along, he stirs things up, he thinks outside the box, and he uses leverage, which he's done time and time again. In the past 16 days since he took office, here in the Western Hemisphere, Canada, Mexico, Panama, Colombia, amazing. The leverage, and guess what? The other countries are caving. He knows he's a leader of the free world, and America is the most powerful nation in the world, and he's using that leverage. Imagine that. Again, smart leadership, outside the box leadership. So people are just obviously have all sorts of opposition to this plan. I'd say a few things. Number one, the people of Gaza have been there for several decades. There's no long-standing, centuries-old connection and deep tie to the land. It's just not there. And it's not there throughout the land, not only in Gaza. We can hash the history of the land and go through that. I can do it. I've done it on previous live streams. I can do it again. But there was no Palestine, some historic Palestinian people dating back to the dawn of time for millennia. It just didn't happen. The Roman Emperor Hadrian called the land Palestine in around 135 AD as a dig at Israel, at Judah, as an insult. Because guess what? Palestine translates to Philistia, and Gaza, I don't think you'll be surprised to hear this. Gaza was home to, you guessed it, the Philistines, thousands of years ago, Israel's fiercest foes in biblical times, in Old Testament times. And again, stay put. We're going to get into the prophetic implications of this in just a minute. But let me wrap up this little interlude by saying this. So there's no long-standing tie there, number one. Number two, people have said this is nation building. It's not nation building, which Trump opposes, and rightly so, which failed in Iraq and Afghanistan. But I made this distinction last night. Let me repeat it here. Nation building in that sense is the U.S. goes, U.S. troops and a large troop footprint, and they occupy a nation where a seething, angry, hateful population still lives there. So they're sniping at and bombing U.S. troops. It's guerrilla warfare. It's disaster. And these are people who have no experience with democracy, and they don't want democracy. What Trump, unless I'm mistaken, and we have a very active chat here, correct me if I'm wrong, what Trump is suggesting here is empty Gaza out first, relocate the Gazans to a better life. Egypt, Jordan, other nations. Relocate them and let's see if they can thrive someplace else and turn away from extremism and be productive members of society elsewhere. And then whoever is there, and I'm sure it's a coalition of nations, not just the United States. Sounds like Trump sees the U.S. as kind of administering Gaza as it builds up into an economic zone with jobs and tourism site. Again, does anyone else out there have a better idea? I haven't heard it. It's worth exploring. Might not work. It might work. It might not. But it's worth discussing. And at the end of the day, it changes the paradigm. Now it's on the table. Now someone's broken the mold. And now different strategies and views and ideas are actually being discussed in public. And Trump is saying a lot of things that all of us were thinking. And it's certainly not enough people were saying. On this live stream we are, so be sure to subscribe. If you have not, click the notification bell so you get alerts every time a new video is posted. If you like current events, breaking news from the Middle East, from an unapologetically biblical perspective, this is your place. Be sure to subscribe. But so you're not talking about nation building if there's no one there and you're starting from scratch. You're not trying to democratize 1.8 million Palestinians in Gaza. They're not sniping at you because they're not there. They've been relocated. Which brings me to the next point. This obviously is not something that would happen overnight. This would take years. There's the not so small matter of before any of this can even be discussed, Hamas must be crushed, the hostages must come home. And then they could get in the nitty-gritty of how to do this, relocate people, etc. But again, it's worth having the discussion. Why not? And it just may work. And even if it doesn't, Trump is very smart here to put it on the table because it puts all the onus and all the pressure now on the Arab Muslim nations, who for years, decades, have used the Palestinians as a pawn. Let's be honest. The Palestinians have continued to live in misery in Gaza and parts of the West Bank under tyrannical rule there. And their Arab Muslim brothers and other nations have perpetuated it, because if all of a sudden the Palestinians started thriving in Gaza and parts of the West Bank, Judea and Samaria where Palestinians live, if all of a sudden they became prosperous and peaceful, then all of a sudden Israel's adversaries and neighbors wouldn't have that card to use against Israel. They always love pointing, look at the occupier, look at what's happening in Gaza, Israel, you're horrible, look at what you've done. Well, if all of a sudden everyone's thriving, then that card is off the deck. It's sad, it's cynical, but that's how it's been. So Trump is putting the ball in their court. Okay, you guys, you're in the region. You don't want the U.S. to come in and kind of administer Gaza, then you do it. What's your idea? What is your idea? Trump's asking the world. He put it out there. He smashed the paradigm. He thought outside the box. To me, it's genius. And we'll see what happens with it. But in the meantime, the prophetic implications, a few things. We talk about Gaza, a few things to bring to light. Some verses a friend sent me this morning, actually, two in particular, about Gaza in particular. Then it would be Ezekiel and Ezekiel's war, the war of Gog and Magog. We've talked about it here a bunch. Would this set that up? You might say, what do you mean? First, how about the book of Zephaniah? Chapter 2, verses 4 through 7. Listen to this, folks. Gaza will be abandoned and Ashkelon left in ruins. At midday, Ashdod will be emptied and Ekron uprooted. This is all along Israel's coast. And reminder, Ashdod, Ashkelon, they're part of Israel now. But in ancient times, that was Philistine country. The Lord is against you, Canaan, land of the Philistines. He says, I will destroy you and none will be left. The land by the sea will become pastures, having wells for shepherds and pens for flocks. That land will belong to the remnant of the people of Judah. There they will find pasture. In the evening, they will lie down in the houses of Ashkelon. We see that now. The Lord their God will care for them. He will restore their fortunes. Okay, and here's the book of Zechariah. Also an interesting mention of Gaza. 1 second as I pull this up. Here it is. Zechariah chapter 9. It gets into Damascus. It gets into Tyre and Sidon and Lebanon. A little further down, Zechariah chapter 9, verse 5. Ashkelon will see it and fear. This is the Lord on the move. Gaza will writhe in agony, and Ekron too, for her hope will wither. Gaza will lose her king. Never again will an oppressor overrun my people. For now, God says, I am keeping watch. What do you think? Does this apply to the current situation? Obviously, no matter what you think of Trump's plan, and you might say, Stakelbeck, you're nuts, you're horrible. We should have a two-state solution. We should put $1 trillion into rebuilding Gaza. And if Hamas is there, we'll work around it. You may think that. But what do you think of those two passages from the Bible I just read? Any correlation at all to today, or was that strictly applicable to, say, 2,500 years ago? What do you think? I think it's fascinating. I think it's worth discussing. And lastly, in a prophetic sense, in a second, we're talking prophecy. We're going to talk Turkey and Syria. You're going to want to hear this. And it's been overshadowed, what's happening there, by the Gaza news and what Trump said yesterday about Gaza, of course, and Iran, which we talk about a bunch here in the channel, of course, but a quick mention. I talked about it yesterday. The maximum pressure campaign is back on. And Saudi, Abraham Accords, that's on the table. Saudi-Israel normalization. You're living in prophetic times, folks. And with Iran, just a reminder, Trump is saying, look, one last chance here. I'm giving Iran, the regime, one last chance. I'm going to apply maximum pressure and basically eliminate Iranian oil exports, which is going to squeeze Iran's economy dramatically. And if Iran then, even then, still refuses to abandon its nuclear weapons program, then we'll do what we got to do and we'll take action. That's where we're at. This is 2025, the year of reckoning for Iran's nuclear weapons program, and may very well be a year of reckoning for the Abraham Accords and Saudi-Israel normalization in a positive sense. And now the Saudis are saying, no, there has to be a Palestinian state. But Trump said yesterday, no, there doesn't. We could have normalization between Israel and the Saudis without a Palestinian state. And Trump said yesterday, look, Palestinian state, not even on the radar screen. He gets it. So keep an eye on that. But prophetically, let's talk about one more thing here that I think is important with vis-a-vis Gaza. And I can see this kind of coming into focus now, folks, as Iran's ring of fire is smashed, Hezbollah on its heels, cowering in Lebanon, weakened, Hamas in its death throes, Gaza about to be completely, who knows what's going to happen there, but it ain't going to be what it was. Assad is gone in Syria. The Houthis, and Trump mentioned this yesterday in his presser with Bibi, the Houthis are about to get the smackdown, and they've already been smacked around a bit for what they've been doing, but now it's going to intensify. The Iranian-backed militias, they're quiet right now. For now, thank God. Hopefully it stays that way. Iran itself, its air defenses have been destroyed, and its nuclear programs on borrowed time, one way or the other. And if Gaza becomes this, who knows, folks, stranger things have happened. Expect the unexpected in the Middle East in these prophetic times. I could see Trump's plan working. Maybe it wouldn't, but maybe it will. And that leads me to, as Israel's enemies are being defanged and humbled, not humbled, that's the wrong word, but weakened, let's say, around it. What about the book of Ezekiel, chapter 38, verse 11? Now, God says to this, what Ezekiel calls a latter days confederation of nations that comes against Israel. I believe Turkey and Iran certainly at the head. And Russia, I certainly lean towards Russia being a part of it. Some say, no, Stakelbeck, Russia won't be. I've always leaned towards Russia, sadly, being a part of this invasion force. Only God knows. But let's say Russia, Turkey, Iran at the head of this confederation of nations that comes against Israel in the latter days and invades on the mountains of Israel, not far from where Syria right now, the Golan. And God says this invading force, you will say, I will invade a land of unwalled villages. I will attack a peaceful and unsuspecting people, all of them living without walls and without gates and bars. Now, certainly, Israel has had a security barrier. It's had heavy security on every border for good reason over the past several decades because it's been attacked incessantly. But Ezekiel talks about when this invasion has yet to happen. It's in the future. But when it happens, Israel is going to be living in unwalled, total peace and prosperity, and they're going to be unsuspecting. They're going to be shocked. And the Bible says, Ezekiel says, the world's going to be shocked. What's going on here? The young lions of Tarshish, they're protesting. Probably the U.S., Britain, many people say. Sheba and Dedan, probably Saudi Arabia, which will, I'm certain, pretty certain, eventually, I should say, will have relations with Israel, normalized relations. Everyone kind of steps back and says, oh my gosh, and there might be some UN resolutions condemning it, but no one lifts a finger. Israel is left to its own devices to fight against this invading force until the God of Israel, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, intervenes miraculously. And I'll leave it to you to read the rest, Ezekiel 38 and 39. But are we seeing this lining up where Israel is going to have peace on all sides? Imagine that, at least for a period of time, including in Gaza, with a new revitalized Gaza and Lebanon. And could we see that? Are we seeing Ezekiel 38 being kind of lined up, the prophetic chess pieces moving on the board? Very interesting to consider. I can see this, folks. I can see this playing out in the way it's unfolding now. It's just fascinating. And along those lines, in Syria, I mentioned the collapse of the Assad regime. Israel is essentially trading one enemy for another, right? Assad's gone. Iran and Hezbollah have been kicked out of Syria. And now we have this new jihadi leadership, al-Qaeda linked, covering and ruling over a good chunk of Syria with backing of Turkey. And Turkey is, again, I think, a part of that Ezekiel invasion force, an integral part. And just something to leave you with, to keep in mind. And this was overshadowed yesterday, but Syria's new president, Ahmed al-Shara, also known as Mohammed al-Golani. Now, Mohammed al-Golani was al-Qaeda and jihadi rebel, all of that. Now he's wearing a suit and tie. Oh, very interesting transformation. But a jihadi doesn't change his spots. But he was in Turkey yesterday meeting with Recep Erdogan. I'm just reading this off my phone. And there was talk of a defense pact between Turkey and this new Syrian government, which would mean, I presume, Turkish troops in Syria at Israel's doorstep. So again, Israel traded one enemy, the Iranian axis in Syria, and perhaps another is being swapped in. Turkey and Syria's new jihadi government, right on the mountains of it, above the mountains of Israel and Syria. What's Turkey going to do here? To say that Erdogan has been provocative towards Israel is an understatement. So keep an eye on that because it's been overshadowed. Events in Syria, Turkey, and rightly so. Look, there's been a lot of focus on Gaza, on Iran, of course, including on this channel with good reason. But we have not forgotten. I've talked a bunch about Turkey as well in recent weeks. Keep an eye on what's playing out there, folks, in Syria with Turkey. It has prophetic implications, I truly believe. And hey, congratulations. In all seriousness, you want to live in Bible times? You're living in them right now. These are, I believe, prophetic events. God is on the move. And in a positive sense, in Israel, in the U.S., he's clearing things out. He's exposing evil. He's shining light in the darkness. I've called it the shift, capital T, capital S. And Trump miraculously surviving that assassination attempt, I believe, was a big part of it. And the Trump effect is creating that shift. God's using the man. And I've said he needs to be like a Josiah, tear down the high places. And I'm pleased to say in the first 16 days of his administration, he's doing exactly that at breakneck speed. It's astounding and glorious to watch. He's operating like a man who knows he's got till the midterms here in the U.S. and anything can happen. So even today, he signs an executive order outlawing men playing women's sports, the trans madness. So great things are happening, no doubt. And I pray this window is long, but in case it's not, hey, as the body of Christ, as a follower of Jesus, we have this unique golden opportunity to advance the kingdom, to spread the gospel, to be light in the darkness, and to just shine that light. And we can do it, again, freely in the light. It's a golden opportunity. Let's not squander it. And let's get some kingdom work done for such a time as this. Fascinating days, folks. We'll continue to break it down for you here on the channel. Until next time, God bless you. And remember, never hold your peace.
Hey everyone, thanks for checking out the Watchman Newscast. Make sure you hit the subscribe button so you never miss an upload, and tap the bell icon so you're notified every time a new video is posted. And don't forget to share your thoughts, insights, and comments below. Thanks for watching. We'll see you back here tomorrow.